Hello, YouTube. I want to tell you about my experience with Rockland Insurance in Richmond, Texas, and what happened to us after Hurricane Harvey. Rockland was my homeowners insurance carrier. They covered my policy, and I paid them through escrow. My wife died 2 days after Hurricane Harvey, and we had water leaking through the roof and coming up through the subfloor where there were cracks in the plywood that allowed us to see down to the ground once I pulled the carpet and the foam padding up. Our roof had not been constructed right. It was a defect that was not known until the hurricane came, and we had a catastrophic amount of rainfall come down. Water got inside the attic and saturated sheets of plywood that were under the AC unit. The air became hypersaturated with moisture inside the house, and we developed a rapid onset case of black mold, and there were several different types of mold spores inside the house. I had testing done. I filed a claim for the water damage, and Rockland had a young adjuster come in. It was a man. He was African American. He walked into my living room, walked into the master bedroom, looked up, and he said, "I don't see the damage." And he walked back out after giving me a claim number. And they did not acknowledge the damage to be more than $700. I had an independent company come in and give me a mold remediation estimate, and it was going to cost my family $12,000 to get the mold out of the house. My wife died 2 days after the storm. She was our provider, and it was my birthday. The day she died was my birthday. It was unexpected. She was 27. We had two young children that were 4 and 7 years old. My son's birthday was just a few days after mine, so he lost his mom the week of his birthday. And thanks to Rockland, and later thanks to FEMA, our home became unlivable, and it remained that way. And we all got sick. We got very sick. My kids went to school sick, and the school called social services on us because the kids were sick all the time and they were constantly missing school because they were sick. This was many years ago. This is back in 2018. I tried to tell them, look, we have water damage from Harvey. We have mold in our home. I'm doing the best I can. I tore all the material that was bad. Took the carpet and the foam padding out of there. I was running air filter systems in there, and I painted the floor with Kills, among other things. And couldn't get any assistance fixing anything. Applied for housing rehabilitation to get the house fixed with the county. They put us on a wait list. No one ever called us back. It turns out they vacated that position, and they left that position vacant for over a year. That man retired at the end of that period of time. There was one elderly Caucasian man that was processing applications, and no one was processing applications during the vacancy period. This is a serious lapse on their part. The office that they had this man operating out of was a hole in the wall. It was a tiny little annex building, itty bitty, like the size of the post office out in Guy, Texas. And we didn't get any help from them. I called Habitat for Humanity. We didn't get any help from them. and then later on they denied that I ever contacted them. FEMA wouldn't pay because they said that my letter was untimely, asking them for assistance after the insurance company denied us. So the house remained unlivable, and during that same period of time, I told my lender that our house had been damaged by Harvey because of defects that weren't disclosed by the seller, and they sold my loan to a predatory servicer. I was using Dixie Sanders' team with Homebridge Financial in Sugar Land, and they relocated. They're no longer in the same office that they were in. They have relocated to somewhere off of US 59, and I was really upset when they sold my loan to Shell Point Mortgage Servicing. There were a bunch of failures. Everybody along the way let my family down. I was a good person. My family, we were good people. We didn't deserve what happened to us. My credit got ruined by Shell Point, that operates under many different umbrellas: New Res, New Pen. The Shell Point Mortgage Servicing is the main umbrella that they operate out of. And basically, what they do is they manufacture defaults. And because of what Rockland had done and what the lender had done, and the denials that we experienced all along the way, we ended up losing our home. And it remained in foreclosure until late 2022 when they finally foreclosed on it. We moved out at the end of 2019, and then it got burglarized a couple of months later. They broke the windows out and took the toilet out of the house and stole our water tank, our neighbors did. They told us they did it. And then there was reprisal reporting because of that situation. Couldn't get any legal assistance. Police told us to move. It was a bad neighborhood. Lost our whole investment, lost our life savings, 401k for me, 401k for my spouse that died. Life insurance policy, lost that too. It was all sunk into the house trying to keep the house. When I had initially filed the claim with Rockland, they gave me a dead claim number. And I was so overwhelmed by everything that was going on that I finally just, gave up on getting any help from them. And that there was nothing I could do. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't get legal assistance or any kind of assistance. And I got sick, so sick, in fact, that I ended up in the hospital. And I almost died. Almost suffocated to death a couple times, and my heart went under stress. I lost 40 pounds immediately after she died. And nothing that I did would remedy the situation. Nothing. I was pulling out all the stops, trying to figure out, man, like, how do I fix this stuff that's going on? I was proactive and aggressive. I wrote a lot of letters to people. Even after we moved out of the house, I mailed out 700 letters. I literally mailed out a letter to every bar attorney in Fort Bend and Harris County. And I got like 5 responses. This is right after COVID hit. Ended up spending a year living in an apartment close to Austin. Finally moved out of there. We experienced swatting calls by our former neighbors and by my in-laws. It turns out my spouse was a special victim. And there was just a whole bunch of other crap that was going on I didn't even know about until later. But it came to the point that I really desperately needed legal assistance. I needed a lawyer. I hadn't done anything wrong, but I needed a lawyer for me and my family, and I couldn't get it. I never got it. And so I just gave up. I gave up after sending thousands and thousands of letters to various different elected officials about my experience with Rockland and Shell Point and Homebridge Financial, and my spouse dying, and getting mold in the house, and Hurricane Harvey, and FEMA not coming through to help us. and losing my job and getting sick and ending up in the hospital before losing my job and having to move out of the house being burglarized, the house ending up in foreclosure, my credit being ruined. All that stuff was happening in a short time frame, and I could not get legal assistance from anyone as a single parent with two young children. Didn't have any family I could depend on. I finally just said, you know what, to hell with it. And I feel that a lot of that could have been averted if I just gotten support from my insurance company to begin with. If they had acknowledged the damage that my house had, come in there and done a proper inspection instead of just seeing that I was a young parent and outright ignoring my claim concerns, we probably wouldn't have lost our house. We wouldn't have lost our life savings, our investments. Everything went completely to pot. Rockland had a mansion type office. I am not even joking. This was like a plantation era mansion that they were operating out of. And the people were walking around in flip flops, and they were walking around in polo shirts and dressed like they were on tropical vacation. The agents were in that office. It was run by a bunch of young people, mostly, with swanky bear rugs on the floor and decorative stuffed animals like deer with antlers and racks, buck with racks on the wall. And it was ridiculous. It wasn't anything like what I would expect to see in an insurance company, like how a State Farm office would be, for example. They're pretty highly rated, but it seemed to me like they were probably embezzling my premiums. I wish that I was joking about that, but there was obviously some misappropriation of funds there or something. I had the money to pay a copay when she died for insurance to get the house fixed, and they didn't even acknowledge the damage that we had. It was much more than what they said it was. I had an independent appraiser come in from Shell Point at least twice to inspect the house, and they're like, this place is a lemon. This house is in terrible shape. You've got tens of thousands of dollars in remediation you need for the foundation alone. And the guy who had built the house was a criminal. I didn't know that when I bought the place until I found a power line buried in my backyard running to the warehouse next door, and he'd been stealing our electricity. He was stealing our electricity for that warehouse next door. And they were running off the same meter across the property line. But we dug that up and we cut that. And I didn't know what to do. There were so many problems in that neighborhood. That whole area was just so run down. There were so many code violations out there in the subdivision. And Rockland denying that claim was the beginning of the end for us. We ended up losing that home to foreclosure. I lost all of my equity, all my investment, everything from a financial perspective. It was a complete total loss that exceeded $150,000. Right after the house was bought by an investor, they fixed it and they turned around and they sold it for $250,000. I bought it for $117,000. We financed $112,000 and we put quite a bit of cash and capital down for closing and all that, and everything is gone. My savings has been wiped out. I spent a year with my family homeless, living in a car. And it all started with how they handled my claim. We had great hardship. I ended up on survivor's benefits with my family. We have shelter now. We have a place to stay and live now. My health has recovered, physically speaking, but It was an absolute nightmare. I don't recommend Rockland Insurance in Richmond, Texas to anyone because they might do the same thing to your family that did to mine.